There we go. Thanks, Mike. So thanks for joining us today, everybody. As you're aware, this month is the month of October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So this month we have invited Lois Fosnot from the PA Coalition Against Domestic Violence. She will be providing some updates and information about the ongoing implementation of the Maryland Model of Lethality Assessment. So I will pass over the baton to Lois to start her presentation.
Good morning, or good afternoon, everybody. I'm used to morning Zoom meetings. So I'd like to say that this is the 10th year for the lethality assessment program in Pennsylvania. I've been a part of LAP even before we started LAP. And the reason that Pennsylvania started looking at lethality screens was due to we had a large number of domestic violence homicides starting in 2008, 2009, 10, 11, 12, etc. And the worst was in 2008, between June and July, we had 31 people die due to domestic violence. It was victims, it was perpetrators, or perpetrators shot in self-defense. So that was very eye-opening for us. So we started looking at tools, and there was a disagreement between the staff at the coalition and also our membership programs is that with the Maryland model, they wanted the police officer to be right beside the victim while they were talking to the advocate. And in Maryland, domestic violence advocates do not have absolute confidentiality, aka privilege, except for mandated reporters of child abuse. So that was one of our concerns because we're very strong at PCADV about the confidentiality between a domestic violence victim and a domestic violence advocate. So we worked out with Maryland, and it took a while. I would say probably 2 years working with them, decided to implement the lethality assessment screen in Pennsylvania. So we had a conference in October of 2012, and the one track of our conference was the lethality assessment program. We had trainers from Maryland come up. We had 12 counties that were pilots, along with 19 police departments. They attended what is known as Train the Trainer, so they could then go back, and train other police departments, their own police department, and then advocates would train the domestic violence program on doing a 10-minute safety. Whoops. Are we there? Sorry, hit something. I disappeared. So they went back to their counties and spread the information to police departments that were interested in doing it. We don't like to force people, be it law enforcement or domestic violence programs. We don't want to force this on them. We strongly encourage it because it is a great collaboration between law enforcement and the domestic violence advocates. So how LAP works is when a police officer goes to an intimate partner, this is just for intimate partner, domestic violence calls. If they feel the victim may not be safe after they leave, or if they do an arrest, be it, simple assault, stalking, terroristic threats, whichever, they can take out the screen and they put the victim to the side to speak with them one-on-one. And then the police officer says, I'd really like to understand the situation that you are in. I'd like to ask you some questions. Some victims will tell them to take a flying leap. So that would be a did not answer screen because that is their prerogative. They don't have to answer these questions. So they'll ask the questions, and if the victim screens yes to one of the top three questions, that's an automatic high danger. If they answer 4 to questions from 4 to 11, that is considered high danger. Law enforcement officers, however they do it, will contact the hotline. In Pittsburgh, they have zone phones for officers. So when they're doing an LAP, the supervisor will bring the phone to the scene and then the officer will call the hotline. In other counties, they're asking the victim to use their cell phone, and we were very against that. But when COVID came around, nobody was sharing phones with anybody else. So we said, we've never heard of a victim being killed or assaulted because they called a hotline on their cell phone. The offender is more ticked off that somebody called the police than if they would see the number on the cell phone. But we do tell them to delete the number. So the police officer should be telling a domestic violence advocate that works at a domestic violence program what the victim said yes to in the 11 questions on the screen. And then the victim will speak with the hotline advocate, hopefully, fingers crossed, and they will do no longer than a 10-minute safety plan just for the next 24 hours until the victim can come into services, or if the victim needs housing, shelter right away, we will work with law enforcement on getting them to a shelter. Now, in a lot of instances, the victim may not call the hotline. We still encourage law enforcement to call the hotline so the advocate can go over a safety plan with the law enforcement officer. Okay. Some programs will do follow-up phone calls with the victim. We can put a question on the screen. Would you like an advocate to call you? And then what is a safe number to call you at? So not every county does that, but some do. We have some programs that only may have 5 to 8 advocates, and follow-up is difficult because they're doing so many other things because they're so short-staffed. But in the 10 years that we've done LAP, we've done 42,359 screens. 28,885 were considered high danger. Most victims will screen in as high danger, and then the domestic violence advocate, once they come in to seek services of any kind, will do the dangerous assessment, which may weed it down that the victim isn't that much in high danger. But this is geared that they will answer yes to a majority of the questions. So we had 68% were high danger screens. We then had 9,089 screens that the victim did not screen in as high danger. Okay, so that was 21%. We then have, and you'll receive this after I speak, there'll be an email going out with my information guide. 4,385 victims did not answer the questions, or the screen could not be administered. That is when a victim is being taken to the hospital, but they should be screened in as high danger due to the domestic violence. But if the victim is extremely intoxicated, maybe very high, there's a language barrier, even though that should not be a problem with language line and other services out there. And so we had, out of the 28,000 high danger victims, 15,000 spoke to the hotline. And we had 9,576 high danger victims seek services. Now, additionally, we had 8,908 victims who did not screen in as high danger or did not talk to a hotline advocate, was non-high danger, did not answer, could administrate, seek services. So that's a total of 18,484 victims in the 10 years that we've been doing this that sought services. And that was one of the big things Maryland found, that with their domestic violence homicides, those victims did not seek any type of service, didn't call the hotline, didn't go in for counseling or looking for protection orders. So we're really happy with the high number of victims that sought services. So the screen is to enlighten, educate, and empower victims. This is not to get more prosecutions or force victims into testifying. This is between law enforcement, domestic violence advocates, and the victim. Now, the screen is discoverable, but domestic violence programs shred their screens 5 days after they send me the data, which is all the data you just heard. And police departments keep them in different files. I don't know exactly. We have 1,500 police departments. They all do things differently. I am happy to say that we do have 454 police departments that have implemented the lethality assessment program with their domestic violence program. So I know I'm not near 1,500, but I'm working. So, is there any questions that you have for me?
Hey, this is Suzanne. I have a question. What do you hear from like feedback from law enforcement as far as what they find difficult about the assessment process or anything like that?
I haven't heard any barriers except for maybe like the cell phones. You know, I can't provide cell phones or domestic violence programs can't provide cell phones to all the police agencies. So that's one barrier that I hear from the Pennsylvania State Police. And then another is for the state police training everybody. So we do have some barracks that are doing the lethality assessment program, but they're being forced by the district attorney to do it, which I have problems with. Because again, I want it to be a collaboration, that they want to work with the domestic violence program and the advocates, instead of just whipping out a piece of paper, possibly saying, I have to ask you all these questions. But like I said, the victim can say, go fly a kite. I'm not answering. So The other thing, and I know there's some hands up, is dual screens, like dual arrest. We see dual screens. And we are very opposed to that. They are taught that in the training not to do it. Because if they both would screen in high danger, a domestic violence advocate will talk to both over the phone, but may not be able to provide services for both because it could become a conflict for us. And if law enforcement can't figure it out at the scene, seeing the people, I don't know how we're supposed to figure it out over the phone. So we do not like dual screens. Okay, somebody has.
We have some questions in the chat too,
Okay,
if you want me to read them all for you.
that would be lovely.
Okay, so one question is, how many counties are implementing LAP?
51 counties, 48 domestic violence programs, and 454 law enforcement agencies.
Okay. And then another question is, if agencies are doing LAP online or through an app, what platform are you using?
We are not using a platform yet. That is between the police departments and the domestic violence program. The one that I know is the most online is Allegheny County, City of Pittsburgh Police Department, and Women's Center and Shelter of Greater Pittsburgh. We are hoping to look at online platforms in 2025 during the new grant cycle.
Okay, and we noticed here there's a couple hands up. Lizette, I think you had your hand up first. Are you there, Lizette? Okay. We'll go to the second person here I saw. William Miller.
Yes, and I accidentally raised my hand twice. Didn't mean to do that, but so from a police perspective, I noticed the question earlier was about how officers feel about it. I know one of the challenges we had was just it sometimes felt cold to pull out a form and start to ask a victim who's already in a traumatic situation to answer some of those questions. So we tried to train our officers to have a smooth transition into that conversation. And of course, as officers got more experience, they didn't necessarily even need the form up in front of them. They learned the questions, and that's obviously ideal, but that's going to take some time. And but I believe for the most part, officers understood the purpose of it and the value to it. But I do know that the feedback that I heard in our law enforcement community was just that it was kind of a challenge to have one more thing to try to ask the victim about. But again, I think time and maybe some training out there for officers on better ways to do that, a little how to show some empathy and compassion while you're doing it. I think that would definitely help. Now, I was surprised a different direction. I was surprised to hear that the limited number, I see it as limited, knowing that there's 1,500 police departments in Pennsylvania. I was surprised at the limited number of agencies that have committed to doing that. I know that I just retired from Carlisle, and we handled it as a requirement. But now that we're talking about it, I don't know if that was a requirement that it was expressed to us by the county or our accreditation process or whatever. But we just always looked at it that it was a requirement. So I would have assumed that all agencies throughout Pennsylvania were doing it. But apparently, Lois, you're saying that that's not accurate?
No, Allegheny County is required, or the City of Pittsburgh is required to introduce the screen every time they're at an intimate partner domestic violence call. So some DAs will require it. I don't know if it came from the district attorney's office. Sometimes that's the only way the DB program may be able to get some buy-in, is with the DA doing it. But yes, I can't believe you're retired from the Carlisle Police Department. Oh, no.
Well, now I'm with CID, so I'm still trying to help. But have
Okay.
you had the opportunity to talk to maybe the PA chiefs or something like that to get them on board? Because they would be a body that would have the teeth to actually make it a requirement.
Like I said, and it's not just law enforcement, it's also some domestic violence programs are like, this is not voluntary. They feel they feel it's not voluntary. So that's another hurdle that I have to figure out, even though I say they can not answer the screen and shut the door. So it's not just law enforcement, but I really do want it to be voluntary. Because mostly the counties that are not doing the lethality assessment program are rural counties where you are talking about the state police being the police department in those counties. So slowly, I keep saying I'll retire once they get on board. So it better happen within 5 years. So.
Okay, Lois, I've got audio now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Lizette. I'm with Mercer
Hi.
County. We have used LAP for years successfully. We're a rural county. And I can share with you, because we do have a very strong working relationship with our Chiefs Association, the What's in It for Them. The What's in It for Them is the screen is designed around questions police already ask. It's just structured in a way they can do the scoring to identify lethality. So it's already what they do. It's just formatted in a different way to be more efficient for them. Most of us who are in victim services, we operate 24/7, just like police do. It's just LAP actually drove home. If it's 2 o'clock in the morning and it's a Saturday night and they're going out on a call with a 45-minute response time, they can do that screen on the porch with their cell phone and then connect them right to our advocate. And our advocate can either do assist them with an emergency after hours PFA or move them into emergency housing or whatever, because we operate 24/7, just like rank and file do. For the chiefs, having that screen has improved report writing for responding officers. It's also reduced frivolous lawsuits. At least that's what they report to us. And it also improves the officer's ability to participate with the DA with cases in court. So from their perspective, there's a range of positives for them, because in our county, that is far and away the number one call rank and file go out on. So for anybody here who hasn't used it, it is going to be one of the best assets for your police. We're all facing challenges with police staffing, and those that are being hired in, they're green as grass. So it also provides them structure to respond to their most frequent case. We're a huge fan of LAP, as is our police, and we're a rural community where we face a lot of challenges, but responding 24/7 hand in glove between victim services and a local police officer is not one of them.
Thank you, Lizette, because yes, you are doing great in Mercer County. Oh, well, this isn't the best screen because it's a Word document and my printer upstairs wasn't that good, but that's actually the questions. And there's only one question about physical violence, which is, has he, she, or they ever choked you? The rest are non-physical violent questions. And it does, it's amazing how it seems that in some cases, the officer can kind of see the victim thinking and then realizing that they're saying to, yes, they think they may be killed. I mean, that's very scary for victims. And when the officer says people in your situation have been killed, let's please call the domestic violence program. And then the advocate saying the same thing to the victim, that people in your situation have been killed. It is traumatic, but it's also eye-opening and empowering the victim, saying, I don't want this to happen to me. So I'll go seek confidential and free services through the domestic violence program.
Lois, we couldn't,
Hi.
when you helped, hey, how are
Oh,
you?
I know, it's
The
bad.
background, I think, kind of takes it over, but if anyone
Oh.
can share, do you want me to share?
I was
my
gonna
screen?
send it to Desiree along with the
Mhm.
information guide.
Okay.
So she can send it out, and my contact information is on the information guide. So. Anything else? Okay,
All
I
right,
will
well,
turn it back over to you.
thank you, Lois. We
Thank you.
appreciate having you here today. So does anybody have any questions for us from PCCD while we're available here today for anything on the protocol guides that you're currently going over? Any other questions you can think of that we might be able to assist with? We can hang out here for a couple minutes if anybody needs anything from us.
So, my name's Heather Britton. I'm the legal advocacy coordinator for transitions in Snyder, Union, and Northumberland counties. And we are really, I couldn't attend the first check-in session, so I'm not sure if this was answered before. We're really kind of just getting started with this process. I'm curious just to hear from other counties logistically, what has worked. I'm relatively new here, so I'd like to know logistically what works for you. Like, how are you pulling together a representative, multiple representatives from law enforcement, dispatch, all of the community partners listed in the response to do their sections individually, or kind of how have you coordinated the process to make it run smoothly?
Are any of the counties willing to share how you've kind of come together to kind of streamline the process? Any examples of, possibly any smaller groups working on each individual protocol, anything like that that you've had success with?
Is it so early in this process that you're kind of sitting there spinning your wheels like Heather is? Does
I think
anybody want to talk about maybe brainstorming some ideas? We know that every team is different. We're also very aware that sometimes there's different power structures within teams. But one of the things that I can tell you that we're really looking for, as well as the statewide partners that helped us with this, is we really want people to talk to each other. We really want people to understand their roles, where one system or one professional, what is it that they can do and where does that stop and who takes over then? And the other really important piece is that whole working out the confidentiality and understanding that some partners may just absolutely not share some information that other people want. And there's a legal reason for it. It's not that they're trying to not work with you or be a good team player. And how do you work around those issues? I mean,
think
there's,
it's
go ahead.
also it's also relationship building
Mhm.
outside of a competition year. We routinely, well, we have an LMS where we have dedicated police training that's password protected, that police can access anytime, any shift, anywhere, around SA and DV issues, around LAP, around elder abuse, around a range of specific content matter that is of value to us in victim services. But larger than that, like for this competition, our law enforcement in Mercer County has been decimated since December 21 at the end of COVID. We lost countywide 60% of our staffing. So they're in a massive rebuilding stage. We've had transition in executive leadership. They don't have capacity. Trying even to do CIT training that we do with CJAB has been challenging because the heart is willing. They just don't have the capacity to do a lot of these things that they want to because their priority is service to community. So a lot of times, like we do an annual luncheon with our police leadership. We break bread, we have conversations, and over time, because it's not a immediate event, it's a closed event just for victim services and law enforcement. It's about them telling us what their needs really are and how we can manage that, either around how we respond to victims, protocols in place, other funding opportunities. I know for many of you on the chat who have different positions at PCCD, I've always aggravated you about funding for police and not expecting police to do something for nothing because, they get paid and they're paid badly in rural counties compared to urban counties. And they're asked to do 9 million things, on spec. For my biggest concern and why I've been such a huge advocate of police since COVID hit is it directly impacts response time to victims. And it directly impacts response time overall for all kinds of crimes. So the lack of attention to funding, particularly in rural counties where our tax base is going away, and they're being asked to, like, if you're going to do training, you have to do training on your vacation time, or well, we'll pay for training, but you can't drive out of county or you can't drive anywhere to get training. So that's why we got creative with doing LMS models and having conversations. And for law enforcement, they're pretty basic in terms of how we interact with them. They want a healthy community too. They want a safe community too. Just tell me what you want the end result to be, and let's figure out how we get there together. Because as I keep saying, we're 24/7. They need to feel that they're being 24/7. We have their back too, in the ways that we can, and not inflame the situation by throwing and this is my bias. Don't throw crap in the road that's going to obstruct the relationship. If the issue is helping victims, how can you as a victim service provider do it? How can you support law enforcement to do it? And actually recognize where the divisions are. And that's okay, because we're all different sectors in the community. But our one true focus needs to be keeping people safe. And we're all, victim service agencies, speaking for my brethren, we're the walking definition of creative. Because when you don't have money and you don't have staff, it's like, okay, what's plan C, D, E, and F? But having conversations with your law enforcement, whether they're part-time positions, whether they're like a police chief of one, versus a 24/7 operation, you need to be sensitive to what that means and what you can advocate. I've been doing advocacy with funders, municipal funders, commissioner funders, whatever, because for us, police response is critical for DV and SA victims, adult, child, elder. We need them to be really cognizant of how we do our business and how we can augment what they do. And it can't be all about us, us, us. We have to think more collegially across systems.
Thanks, Lizette. Just real quick, I'm gonna share my screen if I may, because some of you may not know of this resource, and I don't know if Ken Zaposki is still on our call, but I had put in if everybody should be able to see this. So the Pennsylvania Chiefs of Police Association has their own learning management system. And pretty much Ken has told me anybody who wants to, come in and look at these courses, you get in contact with him, he'll help you set up an account. But keep in mind that this is geared towards law enforcement. And their online modules, they're very well done. They've got interactive videos, they've got quizzes, you can get certificates. And one of the things that we've been doing over the last decade is we have been providing the PA chiefs with money through STOP, and they have been working with a variety of experts, including our own coalitions against domestic violence and the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Rape, and they're now the Pennsylvania Coalition to Advance Respect. But there are a number of courses that are on here, and one of them that is very well done is a short, like 15-minute high-level overview of the entire, the LAP program. And, we will send out the information that Lois provides to us. But I know that, they're sometimes hesitant about releasing copies of the screen because it looks very simple on the surface, but you need to have the training to administer it. And they don't want to just have copies of that circulating freely because they don't want people who haven't been trained to do the highly specialized safety planning and also all the extra stuff that, they train police in terms of how to administer it and, how to tabulate it, etc. But, I would encourage you to get in touch we'll send out the link for this and, reach out to the PA chiefs and, see if you can get the credentials to log in and look around. There's courses on strangulation, on sex trafficking. There's, just anonymous reporting for rape kits, a bunch of courses. And they're valuable very much to law enforcement. They also count towards MOPEC training hours. And they're also valuable to anyone who wants to learn about these things. Okay, so I'll shut up for right now and let other people talk. Ken, you
Ken's
want
hand
to?
is,
Yeah.
Ken's hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to expand on that a little bit more. Yeah, the PAVTN, I mean, one of the goals for the Chiefs of Police Association is to get this information out there to anybody that would benefit from it. So although, the name's Chiefs of Police Association, we've, helped probation, parole, private organizations that participate in helping our victims. And there are close to about 70 courses that are on the PAVTN. And one of the things about it is I could actually give different clearance levels, where there might be something that, one of the basic things is naloxone training. You don't need an account for that. Somebody can just log on to that and take it and print out their certificate. So we have a bunch of people that way. Every other course beside that is actually something that you need to be credentialed and be provided an access level and an account. So, I mean, that's something I could definitely do. My email address is on the PAVTN website. You could just fill out a registration form, pretty basic, and we'll be able to get you squared away. I mean, that's not an issue at all. And we're more than happy to do that.
Thanks. So Heather, in terms of your question, are you just trying to get started with this process? You do know that you don't have to start from scratch, and I believe you cover what, Snyder, Union, Northumberland.
Mm-hmm.
And I would suggest that, your team, when you get together, just work through the protocol tools. I think the first big thing to do is to have those more open-ended discussions. I think, just is your membership, do you have all the required people? I believe you do. Are there other people in your community or organizations that you think should be at the table that maybe aren't? Do you want to extend invitations to them? Does everybody on your team know why they're there? It's the whole mission statement thing. And, one thing that I have seen from where I sit, and when, my staff and I do, the monitoring, will come out and visit you and just see how your grant is being implemented, et cetera. It's a very basic and important part of our job here at PCCD. But when we ask for a mission statement, those don't have to be complex. I mean, if they're more than like 5 or 6 sentences long, you're probably doing too much. So we see a lot of places that maybe put together a mission statement, maybe back in 1997 or 98, and just haven't really looked at it since. But we really want people to take some of, take these tools and really take a look around at your community, where you are now as opposed to where you were maybe 20 years ago. And, get the key people as you can at the table. And if they can't show up at the table, I would encourage you to, figure out other ways you can get their input. If you have to set up a video call with them, or meet them for a cup of coffee or something like that. But the important thing is to update your protocols and make sure they're reflective of what you need to do right now. And I think, is there a particular concern that you have, or some aspect of it maybe that you're struggling with figuring out how to tackle?
Not necessarily yet. I'll certainly reach out. I was really just looking at it. I think, like, as you said, I think we have, looking at the protocols that already exist, there's a lot that is already meeting the guidelines of as long as it's accurate and we're looking at it and it's up to date, that, we can reuse. I was just really, as kind of Lizette was saying, that it's hard sometimes even to get our stop funded partners to the table for our 6 meetings per year. So I'm anticipating, I guess, the challenge of, getting the input. Like, I don't want it to be me and Annette who's here, just me and the legal advocates trying to write it ourselves. I want it to be a collaborative process. So I was just curious from others what has worked. And so, you know, I think I've been here a year. I'm building those relationships. It's just everyone's time commitment, like Lizette was
Yeah.
saying. Everyone's very overwhelmed and short-staffed, and so it's just kind of curious what's working for others and getting people to the table to complete this so it's truly collaborative.
Okay.
We're actually having our annual meeting with our chiefs on the 9th, and it's chiefs and their upper leadership. And one of their guiding principles from the chief of the chiefs is just tell us what you want to accomplish and we'll figure it out. But like doing policies and protocols, they would rather have a root canal than go into that kind of conversation.
Does anybody have any other questions or anything you'd like to discuss with either us or kind of statewide with anybody else in any of the counties?
For the new competition and
That, I think you muted yourself.
yeah, sorry. How, given that we also had our meeting, was it August or September? Are any of the counties actually moving forward? Because I got to tell you, when I looked at that range of work, I about stopped breathing there for a moment. So I was like, how are we supposed to do this in 18 months is generous, to be honest, but that's a lot of work to do when our counties are so decimated with staffing and capacity. And I always feel like it rolls back on the victim services. We'll just write it and we'll approve it, and it's like, except for the president, judge, and the DA who actually go into the detail on the policies, the chiefs just take it on faith that, they'll look at what's concerned for them because of liability concerns, but I don't get a sense it's collaborative in that sense because we've been working together for so long. It's like, just tell us what you want, just keep it simple. And I don't know how to keep it simple when I look at all that mountain of work, because that's a mountain of work. So are any of the other counties moving forward, or are you still stuck in the, how am I going to get this done by December?
Well, I think when we start monitoring in 2024, we'll be making that part of our monitoring visit, just trying to get a handle on where people are with it, what areas they're struggling with. Jamie, if you're on the call, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know that Jamie Peasy was on the call, and so was Danny Beinschroff. They were both part of the original work group that put these together. And we realize that they're long documents, but the thing is that we've outlined like the basic requirements in each area, but a lot of that other stuff are either technical assistance guides or conversation prompts. And, there's little things at the side because we wanted to give people, we didn't want to tell you to do something without at least giving you, something to look at, or maybe, something to spur a conversation. And, they weren't meant to be that overwhelming. And I don't know, Lizette. I don't know what to say. Anybody else?
Well, with law enforcement being understaffed and most of our brethren in victim services, they've been having a really hard time because of wage inflation, just trying to stand up essential services. And you know, it's just everything just rolls back down to, you know, the usual handfuls like group projects in college, you know, it winds up 3 people are doing the work for 10.
Yeah,
Um,
unfortunately,
also-
I've
it's also
experienced that.
It's also an election year. We've got, you know, commissioner turnover, and that's essential too. So there's a lot of moving parts. And I don't think most of us have recovered from COVID, to be honest, because we're dealing with different negative impacts from that. I know in our county, we are being crushed with the traditional opioid and meth crisis. And now fentanyl is, in the last year, is responsible for 90% of deaths.
That's
Just
terrible.
on its own. And that has direct impact on victimization, particularly with our older population. And when you have decimated families because of addiction, you have every manner of abuse known to man, and we just don't have capacity in our sectors to respond. So when I
Well,
say
yeah.
we're overwhelmed, it's just kind of like, where do you find the energy to step back up
Uh-huh.
other than normal daily ops of meeting the needs of community, you know? And hear me on this. I'm not saying give us a pass on the grant. I'm not. I'm just,
No.
everybody's
And
really
yeah.
tired.
Well, I think you do the best that you can with the resources that you have. We're looking for a good faith effort. And I think that if you can look at the areas that are missing from your protocols, for instance, one of the many reasons we wanted to do this was it appeared that everybody had a law enforcement, very detailed law enforcement protocol, but then they stopped after that. And our goal with this was to get people to have the minimum for not only just law enforcement, but for the prosecution, for the medical side of it, for the victim service side of it, and to really, that it is a daunting task, but what the benefit of these will be when they are completed. And, you know, if folks do the best they can and you know, at least get those base requirements in there, is you will have a tool that will pay off in the future, because with turnover, you'll be able to give that to new people and they'll be able to open it up and look and at least get an idea of what in God's name they're supposed to do when something happens. And I know it just seems like this tedious thing, but we also tell people a similar thing with our, we know our greatly beloved PCCD standards for victim service agencies. But those are also supposed to be where, that's if, you know, somebody gets ill or God forbid somebody dies and you have a job to do still. You still have people coming into court. You still have people calling your hotline, whatever. That's your manual that you give to someone so they can quickly get up to speed, know what they're supposed to do, and do it in a basic, competent way that doesn't harm people further. So I hope that people would see the value of these response protocols in that way. So Adrian, you have a question for us? I don't know how to lift up your hand or whatever. One of my younger, more technologically savvy staff can do that. Thank you, Des, or whoever did that.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, so it wasn't necessarily a question, more a comment. Was when we first, here in Cumberland County, when we first got notice of these new protocols, it was kind of like, whoa, it's the same sentiment of, wow, that's a lot when you look at the protocols we already have and reformatting them. But I don't know if this would help Lizette, but we looked at the timeline of what PCCD is asking us to do. And we looked at our stop meetings for next year and the quarterly meetings, and we broke down the sections. So we know, like, by this meeting, we're going to try to have this accomplished. By this meeting, we're going to have to try to have this accomplished. And when you look at it that way, it's not as daunting. So we have not had our first meeting. We have a really strong stop team, and we had a lot of volunteers step up to be part of that protocol updating. But our first meeting's in November and our next stop meeting isn't until December. So we're kind of cutting it short a little bit there. But I think I'm just trying not to put a lot of pressure on all of us. And you know, if we get that section that we want to do done by our December meeting, that's great. But sometimes things really come up, and I think PCCD, I'm hoping they will kind of have our backs on that a little bit. You know, if something emergent comes up and suddenly I'm without 3 staff members or something, as tragic as that sounds. But it really, just a suggestion there, if you break it down in advance and look at what you can do within the next year, it's not as horrible looking as kind of doing it all at once. That was just my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Adrian, would you be willing to share like the milestones that you set and like approximately when?
Yeah.
I think sometimes if people can see an example, it might help.
Well, and we haven't set like our actual dates for next year for our quarterly meetings because we just got our court calendar. But for example, our goal is to have by our December stop quarterly meeting is to have sections 1 and 2 reviewed and starting to rewrite those. And then by our first meeting of 2024, we're going to look at sections A, B, C, and D. The second quarterly meeting would be sections E, F, G, H, I. And then by the third meeting, our goal is to have everything drafted and tweaked so that we can present it to the entire stop team for their review. So that by the 4th quarterly meeting, which should be usually in December, that we have it to the entire stop team for their approval. And then in January 2025, submit.
Okay.
So don't hold me to that, but I'm hopeful that that's what we're able to accomplish in the next 14 months.
Does anybody else have anything they'd like to discuss with anybody? Any questions? Yep, thanks, Jamie. She put just a helpful reminder in the chat that you don't need to rewrite the existing protocols that meet PCCD standards. They are there to also help you strengthen what you do already have. So it's not necessarily there to have to rewrite everything, but it is just something that you can use to, take a look at yours and develop stronger points or strengthen any areas that you might have seen that do need that. Anybody else have any questions or discussions for today? All right. If not, then thank you so much to everybody for being here today. Just a reminder, the next check-in we have for November is virtual as well. That is set for November 9th at 1 p.m. I will send out a reminder closer to time with that link as well if anybody doesn't have that. And at that meeting, we will actually just be discussing the federal certifications that are set. So thanks everyone again. If you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out to anybody, at PCCD. We're more than happy to answer any questions in between meetings for you. So hope you all have a good day.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.